Welcome back, everybody. Well, I've always heard that if you don't know what you're doing, at least look like you know what you're doing. So I've got me a fancy new tool belt here, so maybe I can join into the Carpenters Club. Well, here's the task at hand today, but I have a 50-foot long garage, and then I've got a 16-foot wall up to the ceiling. So for the time being, I'm going to put the washing machine and the dryer out here in the garage. So I will basically have my electrical panels. We'll put a 400 amp service in, so I have my electrical panels here so I can go up, feed into the house, and then I can feed the garage here pretty easy. But then I'm going to put a sink and countertop in here, and then I will have my washing machine and then my dryer, which I've got the dryer located here so I can go straight outside with my vent. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide these spaces off. So I'll come down past my panels, we'll put a wall out. I'll come down here to the end of my dryer, we'll go ahead and put a wall out, and then I'm going to basically build just a closet on this wall. That way we can go in there and organize it and put some stuff in there. Now, for those of you who are saying his wife's gonna kill him for putting that laundry out in the garage, well, you're probably right. She'll probably get me for 3 or 4 or 5 more other things too. But here's my thought pattern behind it. Now, on the left-hand side of the house, we've got the master bedroom up here in the front. Then we've got a little hallway that leads down into my daughter's room. But there is a room here in the center of the house, which is considered an office, playroom, whatever you want to call it. The kids will occupy this space. But what I've done is I went ahead and put a drain in this wall, and then I'll have water right here for this shower, water for this shower. So I'll go ahead and stub out water in the wall as well. And then I will go ahead from the breaker box over at the edge of the garage, I'll go ahead and pull a 220 wire down into the wall, and I'll bring it down here and stub it up. Now, we won't hook it up in the breaker box yet, but I'll have it already pulled here. The only other thing I got to figure out how to do is get a dryer vent up through this wall and get it to where we can vent it outside. We've got 3 hoodlums that live with us, in which we'll have them for a while. But as they start leaving the nest and me and Mom get a little bit older, and we don't want to walk out there to the garage to the laundry room, what we will be able to do is I will be able to take 4 foot of sheetrock off the bottom of the wall in there, and then I'll have access to all of my plumbing, wiring, everything I'll need to hook a washer and dryer up in this little room. So we'll convert it into a laundry room at some point down the road, and it'll be just a few steps away from the master bedroom. So that was my out on putting the laundry out here in the garage for the time being. But with 3 kids running around here, there's a lot of laundry, and I didn't want to make this house ginormous. I want to keep it as small as I can. But obviously, you know, as they get bigger, we'll have a little more space, but we'll use that room for that until they leave, and then we'll move the laundry from here into there, and hopefully she won't be mad at me forever. So with a 16-foot wall, it'd be easy to have a lot of wasted space up there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come across the top of my bathroom. It'll come straight down, and basically I'm gonna floor this all the way down to that walk-in door. That way, if you ever need any storage space, totes, whatever it may be, we'll have that floored storage about 7.5 feet there to work with. And then I'm gonna put a heater in this garage, and we'll probably mount it above the bathroom. And then my floor, my little cubby hole there going back into the attic, my framing will come up flush with the bottom of that hole, and then my floor will slide right in that opening, and it'll be flush with my little breezeway floor. That way, if you ever need to get in the attic, you'll have a little catwalk out here that you can get on and then go back into the attic. But the task at hand is, let's lay out our dividers, build some walls, and then put us a floor essentially across the top of it. Now I'll tell you, these laser levels are handy. Basically what I did was I set it up on top of the door over there. That way it would be up here close to where my mark was gonna be. But then I basically just shot a line over there on the wall, then measured up where the top of my framing needs to be. Got that difference, come down here, got my level line, added the same distance to the top. So now all I gotta do is flip a line from here down to the bottom of my little cubby hole over there, and I'll have where the top of my framing needs to be. And I ain't gotta trust this concrete being perfect, and I'll have a straight level line down through there. If you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time working on stuff by yourself. I've been into all kinds of projects, and most of the time I'll be with myself working, and so being by yourself and being efficient doesn't always go hand in hand. And years ago when I started sort of renovating some houses and working on some different projects, I never did carry a tool belt with me. I might have a little pouch I'd put some screws in or something, but I'd carry my, all my tools in, and then they'd get scattered everywhere, and you're just not efficient. And I can't tell you how many steps I've wasted working on something, but you turn around 15 times looking for a hammer. And so a few years go by, and I was like, well, I need to get a tool belt to make myself a little more efficient and have stuff, be a little more handy. So I went to this kind of tool belt, and I've had, a couple different versions of these little belt types. And hey, these are definitely better than nothing. But you wear that all day with that little belt on it, and you get any kind of weight in it whatsoever, I mean, it's rough on your hips. But when you get it weighted down, this one would always on me, it would turn around to the side, so it's hanging here. It served its purpose, but I figure, hey, I've got quite a bit of stuff going on now, and I need to up my game a little bit and get something a little bit better. Now, if this is your first time watching this channel, I don't do this stuff for a living. I've got another job that I do, and so I've got plenty of stuff going on, so there's always something to work on, and I enjoy this stuff. This stuff's sort of a challenge to me, and anyway, I can't turn it loose, and so I get myself into more projects than I need to. But when you work for yourself, you're not going to be as fast as somebody that does it every day. And more so, you got to do way more thinking before you actually cut. The old measure twice and cut once. I'll measure twice, and I'll get back and think, well, maybe I ought to do it a little bit different. So I spend a lot of time, or waste a lot of time thinking before you actually do any doing. And so having a tool belt, it actually helps you and speeds you up a little bit, because you're not wasting them steps to the tool trailer or to the garage or wherever it may be. But just in this little bit of work that you've seen me do here today, it saved me a tremendous amount of steps by having these tool belts. So I'm gonna walk through just the list of the tools that I've used doing this little bitty project that I'm working on here, and then I'll sort of show you my setup and some of the tools that I have in this bag that, over time I've found that you may need in doing just general stuff that comes in pretty handy. Now, starting on my right side, I'm right-handed, so I typically will reach for stuff first with my right hand. So measuring tape and pencil and that sort of thing, I'm going to reach and get it with my right hand. So I've got a lot of that stuff over here to where I'm going to naturally reach and grab it. But just here's the tools that I've used out of this bag on what little bit of work I've done here. I'll kind of walk through them, and we can count and see how many steps it might have saved me. So number one, this belt has a little loop up here on the front, and so I've got a belt clip on my little impact gun, so I can hang it right here to where it's handy to get to. So there's item one. Item number two, a pencil. Item number three, a measuring tape. See what else I've got done in here. When I started, I had a new pencil, so I needed to sharpen my pencil, so I keep a little utility knife in my bag. That comes in very handy. Let's see what else we got in this one. That's everything I think done in there, but item number 5 is I've got my hammer. So this bag has a right-hand hammer loop, and then it's got one in the back. I've never used a hammer loop in the back. A person would probably get used to it if you did, but I keep it over here on the right-hand side, so there's the next item. And then one other thing, on these drills, like in this case, I had some screws that I screwed me a little block up here to hold the end of that 2x6. I've had to screw some tap cons down in the concrete to put my sole plates down. And so I used to, always, would keep these little bitty bits, and I had a number of them, and I would just keep them in a pouch. And so every time I needed to change fasteners, I had to dig down in my pocket, and I'd come out with a big handful of those things, and then I'd have to pick through which one I needed. And so when I was actually doing this the other night, and I was working on changing, you know, from one fastener to the other, I said, there's got to be an easier, cleaner way to do this. So what I did, this belt has got a little pocket here on the side, so I went and bought some of these little adapters, if you want to call them, that will receive your bits on the end. But it's a lot easier for me to reach down in there and get those adapters with different types of bits already in them, and it's easier to identify them. And so if I need to change, I can reach in here and I can get whichever one I need. It's easy to get a hold of, and I can just put the other ones back in my bag. And so I'm not having to take these little bits out, and then they get lost down in your pockets. And you know, after you use a tool belt for any length of time, it's gonna have screws and nails and everything else stuck in it. But I made that little change, and just working what little bit I've used that method seems to be a lot more efficient. All right, to finish up the right-hand side, I keep a little 12-inch level with me at all times. That comes in very valuable. And then I have a sort of a heavy-duty, thick, flathead screwdriver. And what this usually gets used for is a pry bar. And you never know when you're gonna have to drive and beat something, and it's basically a chisel, a pry bar, screwdriver all in one. But I keep an old one in there that you don't care to beat on, pry on. I keep one of those with me. And then something I don't leave home without, this is a Lennox brand, but it's one of these little 6-in-1 or 8-in-1 screwdrivers. It'll ratchet, but you can take it, change the ends out. You've got all pretty much for just an emergency case. You can get about any fastener that you need with this little screwdriver. But I keep one of these here at the house. I keep one in my truck. Those are handy to have. Last but not least is I keep these little assortment of bits, the little small ends, because sometimes you'll have a small fastener or something that's, you know, not standard. So I keep a little, I guess, assortment pack here, but it's in a little case, and that way I can keep them all together. And then one other thing that I do is I keep just an assortment of drill bits. This has got 1/4 inch up to 1 inch, and then I keep a masonry bit in there. This is a 3/16 because I've been using 1/4 inch tap cons, and then I've got a 1/4 inch masonry bit. But just an assortment of bits that in a pinch, when you need a hole, you don't have to run to the truck to get it. You've got them here, and they're not a lot of weight. It comes in pretty handy. All right, moving on to the left side, chalk line. I use that. I keep a little small pair of channel locks. Well, I know they're adjustable pliers, I guess you'd want to say. But when I stuck that first board up there, it had a staple end of it. So I was able to pull these out, pull that staple out. Pretty handy to have a pair of pliers. I keep a set of these wire cutters is what I call them. But you never know where you're going to be at. You need to clip a wire in two, whatever it may be. Keep a set of those in there. Outside of that, I've got an old chisel. This has been in the family for a long time, but it's dull, but you can move some material with it if you need to. Keep your chisel in your bag. It comes in pretty handy. And then I've got a little adjustment gauge. If you're doing whatever you're doing, you need to find an angle in something. It's pretty handy to have that, and you ain't got to sit there and guess. You can pick up your angle. And then another thing that I used is I had to have more nails for that nail gun, so I was able to have them in my bag. And then I keep a roll of black tape in here. You never know when you're gonna need black tape. And then some extra pencils. And then this bag has 2 pouches for fasteners, which I was using these 3-inch screws. So they're in the front. And then back here in the back, I've just got a variety. That had my Tapcons and a variety of stuff back there. But that pretty much is the makeup, except in one more thing. Speed square. These have got, where I've got my little screw bits over on this side, a speed square, and this is a 6-inch speed square. Fits down in this little pouch here on the left-hand side, so that comes out and works pretty good. And it gets it down in there enough to where you ain't got to worry about it falling out, hanging on something, and getting in your way for reaching in this bag. So speed square works out really well. Now, if you look on the internet, you know, watch reviews on tool belts, and you know, you'll see these guys that are out here advertising these Occidental belts, and I don't know all the names of them, but you can spend pretty much what you want to on the tool belts, $300, $400, $500, I would say. I just, in doing it as much as I do it, I just didn't think I needed to invest that kind of money in a tool belt, especially when it's not being used every day. But this one I bought, I was at, I guess, Lowe's or Home Depot, and I said, I'm gonna see what kind of tool belts they got, but I wanted to try one with the suspenders. This one's got a little wider belt on it, and you know, I'm thinking about maybe trying it without the suspenders to see how it feels on my hips. But the suspenders, after I wore it for, you know, a night and sort of got used to them, I sort of like them because you can sort of balance some of that weight on your shoulders and some on your hips, and it seems to work out pretty good. But I think for this tool belt, I gave $110 for it, I think. So for no more than I use it, it should last me for a while. But anyway, I know there's might be a few people out here that are professionals and do this stuff for a living, and I'm sure you've got some great pointers and great tips on what to put in your tool belt, what to carry, and what not to carry, because these things you load them down, they can get pretty heavy. But I think you could obviously take a few of these out depending on the project you're doing, but I like keeping a little variety because, hey, it'll save you some steps. But if you've got some items in your tool belt that would help some of the people that might scroll through the comments, stick it down there and let us know what your go-to tool is that you stick in your bag that maybe you've not seen here. But I will tell you, they are step savers, and if you're out here doing projects on the weekends, I would advise you at least pick you up one of these. But I think it'll save you some time and definitely save you some steps. Well, now the fun part, I got to take it from here up to there. Well, for anybody that's wondering, it's hot. Hey, I got my header up there. I got all my joists run. So let's put a floor on it. Well, we got a place to walk, and now we can go straight in through a breezeway and into the attic. And store countless items that we'll forget that we have. And Brantley can make a YouTube video later on showing how handy a dump trailer is, throwing his mom and dad's crap away. But anyway, if you watch this one, I appreciate it.